want to talk about MyArcade, and there are two announcements. They announced the Atari MyArcade system and the Capcom Bandai Namco arcade system. Right here, I'm just going through the Atari cabinet, and you can see the pinball machine and the Atari controllers, which has 8 buttons, what looks like a Happ control joystick, and a spinner for games like Tempest. And then here's the Capcom system, which has the handheld with the big huge screen. I think that was 8 inches. And they're advertising all these games, but I'll get into that in a minute. This is the console that you can sit in front of your TV with the controllers, and some additional controllers for the Capcom Bandai system. They also show the pole position 1 and 2 MyArcade. They're getting bigger every time. And these are actual arcade renditions. They're not some remade version of the game. It's the actual arcade games. So here is the big Bandai Namco Capcom system. You can see the size of the screen. It sits perfectly on a desktop. There's the Atari equivalent, and 200 plus games. Now, what they're not telling you about these systems is, well, you got all these Atari games, these Capcom games, and Bandai games, but they're not telling you about all the other games you get, which blew my mind. I said they need to advertise this even more. So, 200 games, what does that mean? Well, you have all the Bandai Namco arcade games you can think of. You know, the popular stuff, right? It's got the 16-bit stuff, Splatterhouse games, things like that. You got the Capcom games, the Street Fighters, and, you know, anything you can think of. But then it's got the Jaleco games, okay? If you're an arcade hopper like me, you know what that means. And it's got Pico games, okay? That's the game list that's on the back of the box. They're not even advertising it. And then you go back to the Atari system. You got the 5200, the 7800, the Atari arcade games, okay? You got the Atari 2600 games, and you also got Jaleco and Pico games on the Atari system. But I mean, Atari's got iRobot, you know, things that you've never seen at home ever before. You know, it's got Berserk, it's got Frenzy, it's got Space Duel, you know. They also talked about, or showed, the Sonic the Hedgehog Sega system, which is using the same style cabinet with the Happ-like controls, which has all the Sonic the Hedgehog games. Well, the original, you know, sprite-based games. And there's a smaller version right there. And lastly, they had the Pac-Man Anniversary system, which is golden color. Their casino player, and lastly, their pole position 1 and 2 system. All of this stuff is supposed to come out by third quarter. Oh, this system right here, this plays Nintendo, Super NES, and Sega Genesis cartridges. And all this should be out by third quarter of 2025. So if you're an arcade fan, look out for MyArcade.